This is entitled A Cry for Unity. It's relevant every day of the year, but it happens to come from MidrashRabbah, Parshat Vayigash. So what we're trying to figure out here is why the Midrash takes one of the most emotionally charged episodes in the entire Torah and tells us that it's nothing as it appears. In fact, the Midrash has to give it a different emotional overlay to tell us that the emotions are coming from some other place we didn't expect. Now, what is that episode? It is nothing less than when Yosef finally reveals himself to his brothers. And even more, to hone in even more, it's when Yosef and Binyamin finally hug and embrace each other. And these are the only two brothers of the same mother, Rachel. They haven't seen each other for 22 years. The Midrash tells us elsewhere that the brothers thought that what likely happened to Yosef in Egypt was that he ended up in a brothel for men. And we also know that Binyamin was so distraught over the loss of his brother that he named all his children after a different aspect of the way he remembered Yosef to be. So here you have this great joy. They're crying tears of joy. And the pasuk describes it as Vayipol al tavrei Binyamin echav vayefk uBinyamin bacha al tavarav. Right? That Yosef fell upon literally the shoulders, the necks of Binyamin, and Binyamin fell upon his shoulder, meaning Yosef. So of course, the Midrash picks up on this unusual term, necks. Why is it in plural? So right away the Midrash tells us the seemingly real reason, or another prominent reason why they're crying, and that is because they both had prophecy at that moment, and Yosef saw that in the territory of Binyamin will stand one day the temples of Jerusalem, and they will be destroyed, and that's why he's crying. And in turn, Binyamin saw that the Mishkan in Shiloh, which is in the territory of Yosef, will be destroyed, and that's why he's crying. So the Midrash is always dealing with the emotional and psychological background or backdrop to the Torah. So what is going on here? What is the message? So perhaps what's going on here is that the Midrash is telling us that as Yosef and Binyamin are embracing, they have also acknowledging something that is true, that namely this is a great moment of unity, but this is coming from a fractured family. After all, the brothers sold Yosef, their own brother, into slavery. And after all, the whole Parshat Vayigash starts out with this confrontation between Yehuda and Yosef, which the Midrash says that was going to end in Yehuda and his brothers destroying all of Egypt. So here they are unified, but perhaps they are acknowledging that they've already started a trend in Jewish history where terrible disunity could end in unity, but that could be followed by more disunity and more unity, and they were powerless to stop it. When we think about disunity in the Jewish world, it could be something that you could be unpleasant, but you could live with, like, say, a power struggle in a certain, Jewish town. But we all know that in the time of the destruction of the temple, as the Babylonians were laying siege to the city, the Jews were fighting each other. And the Biryonim, the zealots, actually burned down the storehouses of food, which would have helped, save the Jews from mass starvation, which is what happened. And of course, we know well from the tragic events of October 7th that the country was undergoing severe disunity, and we know how that can really tear a country apart. So we are now over 2,000 years past the destruction of the temple, yet the divisiveness that caused the destruction of the temple is somehow still with us. And we need the kind of bold, creative ideas that Yosef came up with in order to repair this disunity. So the Midrash ends up in a very upbeat note. And it says, I'll read it to you in English, just as Yosef placated his brother only through weeping, which means that at that time they were crying of joy because they understood that everything that happened for a reason. As Yosef explained very clearly, that he was brought down to Egypt in order to bring the whole family down because that was Jewish destiny unfolding. So there was definitely weeping, but there was weeping of joy because it all made sense to them. And they had unity. So the Midrash goes on to say, so God will redeem Israel only through weeping, which means that we too at the end of days will understand why our destiny had to unfold in such a way full of tragedies and triumphs. It will all make sense to us and we will be weeping with tears of joy. Have a good Shabbos.